Another twist in the Russia collusion probe. The Justice Department's Inspector General will now look into whether or not an FBI informant who infiltrated President Trump's campaign was planted there and paid for political purposes. The announcement came yesterday, just hours after President Trump tweeted this: "I hereby demand, and will do so officially tomorrow, that the Department of Justice look into whether or not the FBI infiltrated or surveilled the Trump campaign for political purposes, and if any such demands or requests were made by people within the Obama administration." Joining us right now is former presidential candidate, former Republican Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Maria. Thank you.
An ominous op-ed over the weekend by James Freeman at the Journal basically asked the question, where was Obama during all of this? We're having this conversation about spying. We're having this conversation about the abuse of power at the top of the FBI and the DOJ. Where was the president? Maybe now we should hear from President Obama and his views in terms of how this all went down and what he thinks about it. What do you think?
I think there are a lot of people, starting with President Obama, but throughout his administration, including Mr. Twitter himself, James Brennan, or John Brennan, who needs to show up and give us some information, do it under oath. We need to find out what happened. And, Maria, the reason is simple. It's one thing for the guys in the striped shirts who are supposed to referee the game to call out fouls you don't like. But when they take off their striped shirts, they put on a team jersey, and they start playing for one of the teams. It's not the score that is at stake anymore. It's the nature of the game itself. Americans, I think, are beginning to realize that this is not about whether Trump or Hillary won. This is about whether or not our constitutional process of elections and a government that is dispassionate toward its people when it comes to prosecuting crimes. Are we going to salvage that great republic, or are we going to lose it because people abuse their power and use their power as a political weapon against people they simply did not like?
Right. And, you know, we know that that there was no official intelligence used to launch the investigation into Donald Trump and the so-called collusion with the Russians. Devin Nunes, the House chairman of the Intel Committee, told us that. And then he joined me yesterday and said that the informant revelation creates a whole new set of questions about alleged FBI interference in the 2016 campaign. Listen to what he told me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures.
If they ran a spy ring or an informant ring and they were paying people within the Trump campaign, if any of that is true, that is an absolute red line. There is not an honest person in this country who can believe that taxpayer dollars going to fund this ring and operate like this, like what's said in the New York Times, I think it would have quite a bit of detail on it. If any of that is true, this is a red line in this country. You can't do this to political campaigns. But I mean, this was done. I mean, according to them, this was done in the spring. I mean, before the counterintelligence investigation was even open. If that's true, we need to know about it.
So, Governor, what answers do you want surrounding the role of this FBI informant? And do we know who paid him?
Well, I think the answers we all want, you know, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. We'd like to have freedom back. We don't have freedom when the government is abusing its power, using its power to entrap people, trying to influence elections. We keep talking about how Russia was trying to influence the election, and they probably were. There's no doubt about that. I'm worried about our own government trying to influence the election, using my money as a taxpayer to do it. If Donald Trump and his administration were to do something similar against Democrats and use the FBI and the DOJ and to use intelligence agencies to go after political opponents, I just wonder what the talking heads on BSNBC would be saying this morning. I guarantee you they wouldn't be saying, well, it's no big deal.
We know the answer to that, Governor. Steve Forbes here. So what's the next step? Do we have a special prosecutor? Does the Attorney General finally take some action? How do we make sure the truth gets out and just doesn't go in the ether?
Well, Steve, you know, I think Mark Penn wrote the best thing I've seen. And for those who may not remember, Mark Penn was Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's political advisor for most of the years of their campaign, including up through the entire impeachment process. His piece in The Hill that came out last night is unbelievably powerful and credible because of who he is and where he's been. One of the things that he points out is that the Attorney General has got to get control over his own Justice Department. Right now, I think it's running him. He's not running it. That has to change, and if it can't, somebody's got to get in there and be the Attorney General and make it happen. I don't like special prosecutors as a general rule, Steve, because they tend to be like Mueller. They get out of control, out of hand. They're answerable and accountable to no one, and usually they just waste a lot of taxpayer money and ruin a lot of innocent people's lives before they go after the real culprits.
Fair point, but on the Attorney General, how do you light a fire under him? And if you don't like him, how can you get a new one through the Senate?
Well, you know, that's going to be a big challenge. But I think at some point, Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions needs to have a heart-to-heart talk. And if Sessions says, I just don't want to do what needs to be done, which is go after an independent review internally, taking the Inspector General's report, but then putting it in the hands of people who have subpoena power and arrest power. If he doesn't want to do that, then he should resign, and the president should put someone in place and push the Senate harder than he's ever pushed them for anything, get that person confirmed and move forward.
Well, I mean, do you think we will see justice here? I mean, it's pretty extraordinary what has taken place.
If we don't, we've lost the country. And I don't mean to be melodramatic, but Maria, when we are in a place where the laws no longer apply but to a select group of people and then are effectively used to go after people for political purposes, then we're no different than Venezuela. We're the KGB.
Right.
We're everything we're not supposed to be. God help us, we've lost the republic when that happens.
It's just incredible that this story is not even on the mainstream media. You know, all they're talking about is Robert Mueller and the Russia probe, and they completely ignore the fact that there was a massive abuse of power at the top of the FBI and the Department of Justice during the 2016 election. You can't deny it anymore.
Well, you really can, and I think that's what's so just frustrating to me, watching the news media. They cover everything but this, and they continue to sound like somebody in the Brady Bunch, Russia, 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 and that's all we hear. But the facts just begin to push further and further that there was a cancer, to borrow a term from years past, a cancer within the government, and that cancer was metastasizing in the DOJ, the FBI, the intelligence agencies, and at the highest levels even of the White House and State Department.
Yeah.
And it extended out into private sector companies who were colluding with the government, not only to enrich certain players, but also to change the future and shape of our government. That is
exactly
absolutely
right.
unacceptable.